Happy St. Patrick's Day. My name is Ian Beard. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here at the Historic Arkansas Museum. And I want to talk to you today about St. Patrick's Day in beer in the Gold Rush. I know, that's a lot. So in case you want me to talk about beer because it's St. Patrick's Day, and I know a thing or two about beer, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But I wanted to talk to you about the Gold Rush because this Saturday, for our third Saturday Living History program, we are focusing on the 1849 Gold Rush and Arkansas's role in it. Specifically the role of some of the residents of our block, James McVicker and Robert Brownlee. So make your plans to come to that from 10 to 4 on Saturday. But right now, what does that have to do with St. Patrick's Day or beer? Well, 173 years ago, on St. Patrick's Day, 1849, right here on our block, James McVicker and Robert Brownlee were getting ready to head to California on what would be over a 6-month overland journey via Santa Fe, Tucson, Arizona, Los Angeles, California, up to the gold fields in the Sierra Nevadas. It's a long trip, right? Many people were making that trip in 1849, so many that they just got a common name, the 49ers. That name survives today in a number of forms, most notably in the football team. Now, all of this is because somebody had discovered gold in California a year before. And right before Christmas, 1848, President James K. Polk, in his last address to the country, said, yep, there's gold there, and you know what? There's a lot of it. And people instantly started to make their way to California. Now, there's a number of ways to get there. Said Brownlee and McVicker, along with many, many Arkansans, including Alden Woodruff, who is the son of William Woodruff, whose historic print shop, or reproduction of his historic print shop I'm standing in right now on the grounds of the Historic Arkansas Museum. He went with them. A lot of notable folks from Arkansas went there, not just from Little Rock, but from companies from Fayetteville, from Clarksville, from Washington, Helena, pretty much any town that had any people at all put together a group to go to the gold fields. Now, these folks all took the overland route that I mentioned. There's other ways to get there, though, as well. A lot of folks took the water route. There's a couple of ways you can go by the water. You can go to Veracruz, Mexico, take a stagecoach across Mexico to the Pacific coast, and then up to San Francisco. You could cross at the Isthmus of Panama, where the Panama Canal is today, but the skinniest point between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, and head up to San Francisco that way. Or you could go all the way around through the Straits of Magellan at the tip of South America, all the way to San Francisco Bay. No matter what, though, your destination, if you went over by water, was going to be San Francisco, the port of call on the West Coast that was most important to the gold rush. Now, there's a lot of things going on at this time, especially in Europe. There's a lot of immigration to the United States. We're in the middle of the Irish potato famine in 1849. A tragic, tragic period of time where the potato crops failed over and over again in Ireland, causing 1 million Irish to migrate out of Ireland and 1 million to perish. Many of those Irish also went to the gold fields of California, just like our friends Brownlee and McVicker. Also, during this time, there's a lot of unrest in the Germanic-speaking principalities in Central Europe. And there's a whole lot of immigration to the United States from there. Much of it, again, heading to the gold fields of California. All of that comes together in San Francisco, where what is St. Patrick's Day known best for? Well, it depends on who you ask. But here in the United States today, drinking beer seems to be a really big pastime on St. Patrick's Day. Specifically, drinking an Irish stout. Now, an Irish stout is, not to get too technical, an ale. Ales like warmer temperatures. The thing about San Francisco is, if you've ever been there, it's kind of the same temperature all the time. It doesn't really get hot, it doesn't really get cold. And this caused a dilemma for brewers. Many of the immigrants that were coming in there, especially the Germans, had a brewing background and began to make beer for the thirsty miners and sailors and everybody else that was flooding into the San Francisco Bay Area. The problem was, most traditional beers from the British Isles, from Ireland, Scotland, England, were used to a warmer fermentation temperature. Most of the beers from, say, the Alpine regions, where some of these Germans came from, including Bavaria, were used to a very cool fermentation temperature. San Francisco was right in the middle. So, the yeast that made the beer work in San Francisco had some of the qualities of that cooler yeast and some of that qualities of that warmer fermentation. And it made a unique beer. Reason is, when you brewed beer at that time, you cooled it and fermented in the open air. Today, if you go to brew, everything's in sealed up in a steel container. But back then, everything was out in the open. They didn't have commercial refrigeration. So to get the beer cold enough that it didn't kill the yeast, because yeast doesn't like it really hot, they would put it in something called cool ship. They would just spread it out really shallow and let it cool off. Now there's a couple of, that leads to one theory of where this beer got its name. I'll talk about that in a moment. But during that process of cooling, that's also with the wild yeast that is in the air, essentially settles in on the cooling beer to help it ferment. They had commercially produced yeast by now, but most of the time, before commercial refrigeration and all that kind of thing, beer was very much a product of your local climate and your local ingredients. The climate would determine, again, what kind of beer you can make, one that likes it warmer, one that likes it cooler, but it would also determine what kind of wild yeasts were in the air. Ones that were not very flavorful, ones that were kind of sour, ones that had different effects like that. The yeast that was carried by the cool, damp San Francisco fog made a beer that had a very, very white, frothy head that the miners would describe as a head of steam. And this beer would get the name steam beer. Now, there's another theory about that as well. Remember how I told you that they put these things in these like really shallow kind of vats? Well, they'd say the steam would rise off of that, and that's what they call steam beer. That's a good theory, but that's true anywhere you make beer. You put something that's boiling in something like that, steam's going to rise off. It's not really particular to San Francisco. So I think the head of steam sounds like a better story. Anyway, they would brew this beer for working class people. Sell it by the bucket. You can fill a bucket full of beer, take it back to your shop, home, wherever, just drink it in the street, which seems to have been a problem in San Francisco at that time. But while McVicker and Brownlee were getting ready for California on St. Patrick's Day, 1849, by St. Patrick's Day, 1850, they were squarely in California in what they call the diggings, looking for gold, and had some success. So, I can't say that they had a beer on St. Patrick's Day, 1850, but if they had wanted to, it would have been one of these steam beers, and you could have found in San Francisco. And they still make a beer inspired by that today. If you've ever heard of Anchor Steam, which is a very old beer brand, their roots go to the gold rush in this story right here. So that's my really, really long journey to get from St. Patrick's Day to the gold rush to beer and back again. But just a reminder, of course, Facebook Live every about 10 a.m. or so on Thursday. Make sure to check in next week. You'll be doing Blacksmith Shop on Tuesday, yes?
I will, absolutely.
Blacksmith Shop on Tuesday. This Saturday, we're doing our third Saturday Living History programs. The ground's going to be open for admission, which is $250 for an adult, $150 for over 65, $1 for 18 and under. You can come around, wander around, interact with a number of costumed interpreters like me. We'll be having people in the print shop printing the Articles of Association for Little Rock, California Company. That's the group of Little Rock residents that head to California. We'll be cooking up based on the rations they had on the trail. We'll be surveying, see how far it is to California. You'll be able to pan for gold with some miners, play some period games, see the blacksmith shop and work, do all sorts of great activities on that day. And wait, there's more, because we're going to do that all spring break too. So Tuesday through Friday of next week, while most students in Arkansas are off for spring break, we'll be doing a lot of those programs each day. We'll do a different set each day. But any day, Tuesday through Friday, if you come to the Historic Arkansas Museum next week, we'll have living history programming that you can come and enjoy and interact with. So come engage with your history with us, and happy St. Patrick's Day.